we're all humans trying to do stuff with limited time, it changes the conversation. Like you're saying with Michael Jordan or Michael Schumacher, or we really focus on what makes the GOAT instead of what is the cost of being the GOAT at what expense.
This is the Humans of Gaming podcast, an open and honest conversation about games, life, and belief.
Hey, welcome to Humans of Gaming. I'm Tr Dixon. I am the chief content nerd at Love Thy Nerd, which means I do website articles and stuff, and other stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm joined by Chris Gwaltney. Hey, Chris.
Hey, I'm Chris. I'm the chief executive nerd with Love Thy Nerd, and this is the Humans of Gaming podcast, where we invite game designers, content creators, industry folks, whether board games or video games, and we just like to have chats with them and good conversation and get to hear what makes them tick. And for this episode, we had Dan Kazmaier.
Yeah, Dan's super interesting guy because, I think first people want to know that he is a board game designer. He and his wife made a game called Chai, and they're doing a whole bunch of expansions and things to it. He's super interesting guy because he's like deep into things. He gets deep into everything he does. Like he decided he really liked chess. So he became like a professional chess player and got like super deep into it. When he made Chai, he like researched tea deeply and carefully. And he's one of those kind of guys that I can sympathize. Maybe that's the wrong word. I can identify. I get people like that because I'll get really curious about something and find myself reading Wikipedia for a couple hours. So I get it, but
I don't think I could ever be his friend because I hate having those kinds of friends that are like, they're just good at everything they do. You know, like everything, they just have the Midas touch. And I think that's Dan. So sorry, Dan, we can't be friends.
Yeah. But he also is like, I think, done a lot of interesting humanitarian work. We get into that too. I mean, work in the area of immigration and just like helping people settle here who are coming from war-torn countries and things like that. So yeah, just kind of really like genuine. It just seems to me like a really genuinely kind soul.
Yeah,
which is cool.
He was one of those guys, like just very quick, even in email. Like when we were emailing back and forth with him to set this up, like I just knew from that moment he was one of those people that just has a giant heart and like was just super kind and sincere and real. And I think that comes through in our conversation with him.
So without further ado, here's our conversation with Dan Kazmaier. So where are you from, Dan?
Hey, I'm from Calgary, Canada. So north of Montana, right beside the Rockies.
Okay.
Thank you, because my Canadian geography is crap. So that was helpful.
So is it still winter there basically? Still pretty cold?
Yeah, it was actually snowing yesterday. But we have a unique phenomenon called Chinooks, where you have high pressure and low pressure points. And when the heat goes over the mountain, it just kind of melts everything. So you might have black ice the next day and not even know it when you drive.
Oh, that's fun.
Yikes. It was 80 here today.
Oh my gosh. Chris lives in Southern California. Yeah. So
it's the Santa Ana winds.
Yeah, it's I live in Nashville, Tennessee, so it's warming up here, but we've had some nasty weather too. Like we had some serious flooding this last week. It was kind of scary. So, yeah. But we didn't come here to talk about the weather. Dan, you're a game designer. Tell me about what you do in the world of game design.
Yeah, well, my wife, Connie, and I, we run Steep Games here in Calgary. There's a few other local publishers like Roxley, Dice Born Heroes, a few others. So we've had a cool little creative community, which has pushed us towards publishing. That's always the choice. Do you self-publish? Do you make your own company, Kickstarter or whatnot? Or do you find another publisher to make your games? And yeah, we just decided to run for it.
That's cool. And when did y'all get into that?
I think it was roughly 2 years ago in a few months. So like the weekend after PAX Unplugged, 2018.
Wow. So how did you get to this point where you decided like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to make games. I'm assuming you haven't been doing this like for forever. This is like it sounds like it's a relatively new thing for you. So what were you doing before?
Yeah. So I guess prior to that, I was helping out start a humanitarian organization. So I did that 5 to 6 years coming out of seminary, and just reflecting on it this afternoon, I was in a refugee camp in Greece. And one way for us to communicate with refugees who were in the middle of the humanitarian crisis, which still goes on to today, we were struggling to communicate with some kids. We had translators and whatnot. So we busted out a copy of Uno, actually. And right away, their eyes lit up. So as we're dealing it out and talking a bit more about like some of their emotional needs and their family backgrounds, that sort of thing, I really came to the realization that games are like a tremendous tool for helping people get through trauma or just connecting people together across cultures, let alone languages. My own personal background, I used to play chess semi-professionally for a good 15 years. And
that's why you made the comment earlier about Chris and the chessboard.
It's all coming together now. Okay, got it.
Semi-professionally, that's I've never met a semi-professional chess player.
Yeah, man.
That's interesting.
I like to say I'm good enough to know that I suck.
So you have to tell us then, did you watch The Queen's Gambit on Netflix? I'm sure people ask you that all the time.
Oh yeah, day one. I think this Christmas I had more. Oh, it was brilliant. Yeah, it really dives into kind of the backstory. Because if you think about it, even sports, like a famous NBA game, or for us in Canada, hockey, it comes down to these really interesting moments between coaches or players behind the scenes, like at a restaurant beside the hotel at the chess tournament the day before, or like a comment that really sparks things. So nothing's really in a vacuum. You can play the chess game, online, play a 1-minute game or a 10-minute game, but it has all these intricacies in life. So it was really fun traveling to like Iceland and other places representing like my province or country. But yeah, I just wasn't good enough to make it a lifestyle. I have friends who became like Canadian champion or whatnot, and they stream on Twitch, but there's not a lot of money or ways that you can make chess kind of a living.
Sorry to bury the lead, because I thought what you were talking about with working with those refugees and games like that is just so freaking cool, because that, I think, just nails how universal of a language games and play is.
Yes.
And like, dude, what a beautiful sentiment that you were sharing there about like seeing how valuable of a tool that can be for building relationships, ultimately just like loving people, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of my dream for down the road. I'd love to create some tools that are not only fun, but they can help from a different angle. Like the game Dixit, you can talk about what stories you see within the cards, and from that draw on different perspectives. Or if you're familiar with Rory Cubes, I actually met Rory at a game convention, and we're going to try to do something together, but he has a background in peacemaking and counseling. So he's of the same mindset that, all of us as humans, what it means to be human is to play. So let's explore that and bring things out.
Yeah, that he was one of the guys that made Holding On, right?
Yeah, Triple Rory, Billy
yes.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yep.
So you're going to be working on a project with him, and what is that?
Well, we just brainstormed at a convention, but we've been in touch, and yeah, I've been meaning to follow up to him. So thanks for the reminder.
Yeah,
you heard it here first, folks.
That's cool.
Oh, man.
Yeah, hot scoop.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So, what was that? What's the process been like for you? Like, what's really from working in the humanitarian world to now like being a board game designer? That's got to be a pretty unique transition that not many people have experienced.
Yeah. Well, if I'm completely honest, it was probably a little guilt ridden, if I could say. Like, you have the quintessential person saving the refugees or whatever. And like, I'd go to churches and do a presentation, and people would rally behind a luncheon and be like, yes, we're going to bring over a refugee. And then 9 months later, they have the funds in and it works. And then the next day I'm making board games. And I never thought that the two would overlap, but there's just so much, I guess, wonder in making games that connects people, that, like, for me personally, trying to legitimize that, I think I just had to accept more of who I was going forward as well. And yeah, like, don't get me wrong, I'm still loving refugees and encouraging people to support them. But I find that myself, on my unique journey, at least, that in this moment, making games, yeah, it's been fulfilling, and it creates community for people. So there's good in that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, are you like, I mean, you full time in with Steeped Games, or are you still kind of like having to do bivocational stuff, or?
Yeah, right now I've just decided to do it full time. So I have been for probably 6 to 9 months.
Oh,
Before
wow.
I was doing a little bit of consulting for Kickstarters.
Mhm.
We had just run one or two, but yeah, I like making people come alive through how their product can come alive and identifying things. So yeah, we're going to see how this goes. Connie, my wife, is a full-time grade 4 teacher, so we have a little bit more security there, but
God bless her.
I'm kind of the ideas guy. So
Mhm.
we'll joke that I'm more of the balloon and she's the string. So as soon as she comes through the door, I'll be like, hey, babe,
like
I
that.
got this great idea. Do you got 30 seconds? Can I give you another pitch? And she'll be like, okay, well, have you done the other, 10 projects that we've been kind of working on? And yeah, so the balloon kind of fizzes out a little bit. But after I get to
You
share
need
that,
that though, that's good. It's a good
totally, yeah,
team.
got to be grounded.
So tell us about your games. Chai is the one that I've seen, I believe. Do you have you guys published other games? Like I think there's been some follow-ups to or some expansions to Chai. Is that right?
Yeah, so I guess Chai is an immersive family tea game. It's 10 minutes per player. Everyone's playing as a different tea merchant, whether it's green, black, oolong, white, or rooibos.
Are
And
you
then,
are you a tea person? Does this come from
you know what? I was
a appreciation of tea?
probably not as much as I am now, to be honest. So
Hmm.
I'm actually sipping on an Earl Grey decaf winter white at the moment. So
Nice.
definitely
Way
immersing
to be on
ourselves.
message. Yes.
That's right. Yeah, like different tea companies have sent us stuff, and Harney and Sons in the States, they made us tea influencers. And then last week, the World Tea Expo.
Tea influencers?
Yeah, tea influencers. It sounds really nerdy, but hey, I'm a chess geek,
Hey,
so
Not at
dude,
I
all.
can
you're
take
in the
it.
right place, my man. That's fine.
Yeah, even like last week, the Tea World said we were the most innovative um, tea company in the world out of 100 new startups.
Whoa.
So that was a huge honor that took us by surprise, that
Yeah.
we have value in the tea world. So we got a booth at the World Tea Expo in Colorado. Um, Vaccines pending, but yeah, it's been really cool, like navigating basically an adjacent market. So there's a huge
Yeah.
overlap between gamers and tea lovers. Working on a coffee game, so maybe kombucha or bubble tea. A couple more projects we have in the works.
Dude, honestly, the beverage game market is limitless. I feel like every week there's a new like trend beverage that comes out.
Oh.
Totally.
What is the Argentinian? What is that mate? You could do a mate
Oh yeah, yerba
game.
mate. Yep.
Yerba mate. Yeah, there you go. Sodas, different sodas.
Possibilities are
Yeah.
endless.
I've seen some beer games. I feel like there's already a lot of those. So I don't know that that's like a great market for
Yeah,
you,
there are a
but
lot of beer games.
Well, last week the name Victory Pints would make a great name for a game. So now I have
that
to.
is a solid name.
Oh, that is good. So you and Connie worked on this game together?
Yeah, just in our spare time, we kind of pulled together our date night money, if you will, or you normally go out for the movies or something or sushi, but we're like, hey, let's try to market this thing and grow a little Facebook community. Bought a 3D printer. Instead of sending it out to a print shop, we made all the little components ourselves. If my dad's listening, thanks to him for buying a circular anvil. And he went into our basement furnace and just hammered away like Gimli on all these cardboard tokens because we needed about 100 a game. So he did about 7,000 over 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
What a dad thing to do.
I know, right?
Yeah.
That is just freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Dad of the year right there. That's impressive.
Totally. Friends came over for pizza parties, stickering things. Like, it's just, it was a hoot. I mean, board games are so community minded, and ours was kind of built up from the ground for that. Like with a free print and play, that sort of thing.
And now, were you, the two of you, like you and your wife Connie, like were you already kind of in the board game world, like hobby board games and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So when I met Connie, I would still go to a lot of tournaments overseas. We got married and then went to a few more, and I realized, hey, maybe doing a.
So you met her from like doing chess from being a competitive chess player?
Right. It was just more locally at our church we connected. I was doing some humanitarian work in China with seniors, and then I did a presentation, and she had just come back from her own vacation in China, and it was like, hey, this is a cool story. Let me take this guy out to Starbucks. So actually, on our first date,
she knew what she was doing.
She asked you out, huh?
Very intentional.
She was doing. Absolutely.
And at least my story is that she asked to do a book study. But apparently I didn't interpret it that, or she didn't interpret it that way. So I don't know. Here we are.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
So you were kind of into games. Like what kind of games were you playing before embarking on this whole chai thing? Like what kind of board games?
Right. So it was purely chess, and then realized going to tournaments wasn't really in our agenda because they can take 5 to 7 days. So packed away the chess stuff, stopped coaching. And then on the way back from Iraq, we stopped in Toronto at my uncle's place. And he was like, hey, do you want to play Puerto Rico? This used to be the number one game back in 2001. So we cracked it open, and it kind of brought that liveliness out of me again for like strategic games. So I flicked on Kijiji. We bought 30 games, used the next day, flew back to Calgary, finally got all the games. Yeah.
You went all in, didn't you?
Totally. That's kind of our mentality where if we do something, we just dive full in.
Just gonna do it, yeah.
Yeah, definitely a strength and a weakness, but I think we probably got a good 200-300 games in the next couple of years. Played probably 3-4 times a week with friends.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I guess in my own background, I had made games for fun as a kid, whether it was like a book project on The Hobbit or, different social studies classes, that sort of thing. And looking back, it kind of grounded me in, hey, this is something I enjoy. Both of us have a background as wedding photographers, and I did marketing and graphic design for a school. So things kind of came together, and we decided we could just do it ourselves in a way. So we did the first revisions in art and the graphic design, and then found a few really talented artists from India just to give proper representation. Chai means tea in a lot of languages. So when you go to Starbucks and order a chai tea, it's kind of redundant.
You're getting a TT?
Totally.
It's like saying PIN number.
So what is your chai tea then?
Yeah, we have
It's just like a special type of tea when you get that at Starbucks.
Right. So chai, at least how we typically think of it in the West, is masala chai. So it's a spiced beverage, or you might get pumpkin spice in the fall, and that is traditionally a chai.
Barf.
Tea. No judgment.
I'll be a tea gatekeeper,
Yeah,
Drew.
I'm just not. I just think like here's my view about pumpkin flavored things. Like I'll eat them or drink them, but it's not ever going to be my first choice. It's kind of like a unnecessary flavor. That's how I feel about pumpkin stuff.
It's weird.
Pumpkin spice, pumpkin pie, or
Do is like pumpkin spice stuff, is that popular in Canada? Or have
I
y'all like
guess. I mean, everything is up to whether McDonald's or for us Tim Hortons is promoting it. So we'll buy what's on
yeah.
sale. I don't know.
Well, I feel like if it is a thing in Canada, it's probably our fault.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. So
That's okay.
I'm sorry that horrible flavor, that horrible American flavor was imported,
Hey,
made it across
I
the
feel like you
borders.
have way stronger feelings about pumpkin spice than I ever knew, Drew. And I thought I really knew you
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. I feel like we needed to get this out there.
Yeah. Well, it's out
Um,
there now. Dan, like what are your guys' go-to like board games just right now that you find you're playing a lot?
let's see. So if we're just going to break out a game that doesn't have a heavy rule set, I'd probably say Concordia.
Okay.
It's really elegant. Um, the guys at Shut Up and Sit Down did a really good review for it where you're just playing one card each turn, but which card in your hand is just mind blowing. It's
Mm,
kind of the game that Settlers should have been in my mind.
okay.
But I love Settlers too. Started on that university. There's Azul, which was really popular a couple years ago. The Spiel des
Mhm.
Jahres.
it's a
Um,
solid one.
yeah, Wingspan. We try to get a few more German games. My last name is close to Cheesemaker, Kazmaier. So we can import stuff from, the Amazon Germany, or we'll have friends come back and bring something. So there's one game on plums set collection. I think it's like Pi mal Flummen, like one more pie. It's kind of a word play. That's a cool game.
Yeah.
Point salad, that's good as well. But we try
Mm,
to play a good 2 to 3 new games a week. Just as a publisher, you're always trying to, I guess, have input into what creative things other people are doing.
Mhm.
The other day I was at the mall and we went into like some kind of beauty product store and it just blew my mind because you had all these really fascinating cosmetics. And I was like, hey, the board game we're making, we could have this kind of cardboard sphere, or look at the cool thing they did over here. Yeah, product design is really fascinating to both of us.
what are there games, being that you kind of come from this world of chess and I'm sure you've got however many gajillion chess games under your belt. Like, are there any modern board games that kind of scratch a similar itch to chess? Or, because there are some of those kind of more abstract, I
Yeah.
think of like, Onitama, or there's
Mhm.
another one. It's super simple and it's just like rocks. There's like black rocks and white rocks. Man, I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, are there like modern board games that kind of scratch that itch for you?
Uh, yeah, I guess chess is a pure abstract game, pure knowledge. So there's no unknowns in it.
Hmm.
And I really like the modern board game world on the side with it because most games have a little element of luck, whether it's flipping over a card or not knowing what your opponent has in their hand or what's in the deck. Maybe a die is involved. So I don't see too many parallels to chess completely, but yeah, Onitama as like a chess light, it's brilliant.
Mm.
Having the cards transfer hands and movement changes. So we spice that up with our chess friends. We break out a chess clock when we play Onitama.
Oh yeah.
So you play the whole game in 3 minutes for each side, and that just reduces the cognitive overload of the mind. Or
Mm.
else you could just focus on the position for 20 minutes before making a move, which is kind of what the chess world does. So doing different time constraints really helps. But even a game like Hive, that's a great abstract.
Mm.
You got like the Ladybug expansion and a few others. Like
Hmm.
that definitely scratches the abstract itch.
What I want to know, if you play that many games every week, is how you're able to get through that many rule books. Uh,
You found my weakness.
I hate reading rule books.
Yeah,
So if I was to play that many new games every week, it would be a struggle for me.
totally. Well, you got to find friends who love rule books more than you. And fortunately for us, my friend who works with us, he loves them. He used to teach games at Snakes and Lattes. It's a board game cafe in Toronto.
Hmm.
So he has literally hundreds of rule books in his mind, and he's able to catalog them appropriately. I have another friend, he consults for rule books for different companies. So Every Wednesday or Thursday night, we'll hop onto TTS and he'll just dive into a 30-minute rule discussion on, Pax Pamir or something really intense that would take me weeks to learn. And yeah, he said that he enjoys teaching a game more than playing it. So I'm all for things
Wow.
like that.
I do really love teaching. I really love teaching games, but I hate rule books, and I'm forgetful. So I sometimes forget the finer details, and
Yeah,
people don't love that.
I actually enjoy teaching them as well, kind of. But I get really, I have to know it really, really well before I'll teach a game to anybody. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if I'm going to play a new game with some friends and I'm going to be the one teaching it, I'm watching YouTube videos and the build up to when we get together to play games, because I don't want to get something wrong. And I also want my teaching to be really clear. So I don't teach a lot of games because I just don't have the time to prepare the way I feel like I need to be prepared.
You just do what Dan said. You just outsource it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
At a local convention, I made the mistake of signing up to teach Root 6-player on 2 different tables.
My man, what were you thinking?
I know, 2 tables at the same time. No one had played it, and I'd played it twice in preparation to teach it.
Yeah.
And it was, one of those long Saturday days, and 6 o'clock.
And they were 6. You said they were 6-player games?
Yeah. So 2 6-player games.
Oh my gosh.
This is the height.
God bless you.
Height of the hype, where everyone was so eager to play. They showed up 10 minutes early. They got their chairs and, the raccoon beverage and all these things. and then I show up and, teach it, but not in depth, in the sense of we need to play this, let's have fun. Mm-hmm. So I remember just going between the tables back and forth and, just totally stressed out. And it eventually gathered a crowd. And fortunately, other people could help with a few rules. But yeah, I got to
not an easy teach, man. That is, especially 6-player, you're teaching 6 games in one.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. Wow. Won't do that again. Gotta stick with what I'm doing.
I want to say it was Gen Con. We hosted a bunch of events for Gen Con. Yeah, and we would do these learn to play, whatever. We'd host a bunch of learn to play games.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of those little ways we at conventions that we try to build relationships with people and provide a service. I think that's one of the cool things about convention. That's one of the things I love the most, honestly, about Gen Con or PAX Unplugged, is that that's a great way to learn fun new games without having to read a rule book, because you just that's the best way to learn, is play it, right?
Yeah.
And have somebody walk you through the rules as opposed to reading the rule book. But yeah, I was teaching, I want to say 4 or 5. I think it was 5 brand new people to play Scythe, and it was painful. I mean, because that's a great game to learn if you have one new player in the group. But if everybody's new, that's it just takes forever.
Yeah.
And I think this particular group too was some people just when they learn a new game, they're just I don't care if I win. I'm learning, so I'm just going to try stuff. And by the way, if you're listening to this, that's the way. Just try stuff.
Especially
otherwise,
Scythe. Oh man,
especially
just do something.
Scythe.
It doesn't matter. You're not going to win your first game.
But this particular group wanted to analyze every decision. So it was supposed to be I don't know. It's just it'd be a 2-hour learning session. And after a while, I had another appointment. I was I got to go. You guys are on your own now. So I
think
taught
I
him
took
for
over for you or something.
Yeah, I think somebody took over, but they were there for 4 hours.
It was long.
Yeah. Which is not even half of a game of Twilight Imperium. So
that's true.
Fair.
Do you play any of those super heavyweight games like that?
Yeah, occasionally. I mean, Scythe is still in my top 10. I got the legendary box and had a friend paint all the minis.
Did you get those metal mechs?
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a favorite around here. I think we really like immersive games. So that's the kind of experience where we want to read through every encounter card.
Oh yeah.
Near and Far, Above and Below, Ryan Lockett's games, they also provide that experience. For heavier, it probably comes down to what my friend wants to teach. So some of the GMT games where they have, asymmetric playing and takes 3 sessions to get through, like I don't gravitate towards those. That's kind of where chess comes in with opening theory and databases. But yeah, I think we're probably more like the 2.5 complexity on Board Game Geek of getting in a 2-hour Euro and having fun. So Ruins of Arnak, the Lost Ruins of Arnak, that was a great one. Came out a few months ago.
We just ran an interview with the designers of that.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
What's up, nerd? You digging this podcast? Well, the audio enjoyment doesn't end there. Visit ltnonair.com and make LTN Radio your new go-to for the best Christian rock, rap, pop, and indie, as well as our exclusive LTN shows and podcasts, some of which air on the station before they're available anywhere else. Visit ltnonair.com to listen now and find the link to our app. Now back to the show.
We do like to get personal and kind of hear about like what makes you tick, and
sure,
we've already heard a little bit about your like history as a semi-pro chess player. But where did you grow up in Canada, or where are you from originally?
Yeah, born and raised in Calgary. So I'll say things differently than how Connie would, coming from Toronto. She makes fun of me.
And I love how you say Calgary.
Right.
I've for my entire life I've been saying it wrong. So I'm glad that we had
Calgary.
you on.
Yeah,
I've always been
Toronto.
saying Calgary.
We have lots of Canadianisms.
Wait, how do you say Toronto?
Toronto or Toronto or Tirana?
Tirana.
Okay.
Yeah,
what's
Tirana.
the correct?
I think it's Toronto.
Well, I've been doing that one right then. I was like, wait, have I said that wrong my whole life too?
Yeah, all these localisms.
So you grew up in Calgary?
Yeah. The cool part with my story that I didn't know I shared with Jamie Stegmaier is that we're both adopted. So that was, I guess my story from day one or before the womb. And it wasn't until probably 4 months ago that we even did a DNA test. Connie was super interested into my background, and it makes sense too, just for like health reasons, I guess. Like, is there diabetes or something in the history of our family? So yeah, that was kind of cool. And it turns out I'm actually a second cousin to someone on Instagram that's a famous reviewer from Toronto. So we've been friends for years in the board game world and had no idea we were related. So yeah, just crazy stuff like that. So my adopted family, they're mostly from a German background. So my last name Kazmaier, grew up in Calgary. They tried having kids for 7 or 8 years, and there was 3 or 4 babies where my parents were going to adopt them. And then basically on the last day, the mom would say, I've been really connected to my baby now that given birth to them. And yeah, it was gut wrenching for my parents. And they actually took their name off the adoption list. They're like, maybe this isn't for us. My dad was diagnosed with MS. So they said, it's probably a God thing. Let's not try this anymore. But the agency thought that my parents would be perfect for a baby. So they kept them on the list. They didn't even tell them. Yeah.
That doesn't seem entirely legal, but okay.
Probably. I mean, it was the late 80s. Adoption agencies were new in
it's a Wild West out there in Calgary.
Oh, totally. Yeah. We have the largest rodeo in the world. So a year went by, and then I was born in the hospital, and the one lady who had kept my adopted parents on the list, she looked at me and was like, I don't know why, but this baby is for the Kazmaiers. So kind of like in The Matrix, where Neo is offered a blue pill and a red pill, she went up to the lady who just gave birth and was like, I know you're giving this baby up for adoption. Here are 2 folders of families that you can give your baby to. You have to choose. And she picked my parents, and just a crazy story.
That's wild.
Yeah. Phoned up my parents, was like, hey, are you still interested in having a baby? And no joke, my dad said, I was just at the hospital today and they said that I don't have MS. We would love to have a baby. Yeah. And my mom had just quit her job to go back to university. A couple of days later, I was given to the family, and
So was
yeah.
he was diagnosed with MS, and then they were like,
Whoops.
just kidding,
Yep, last year.
psych, or like what? How did that happen?
That's basically it. It was just a scientific error, less than a percent.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah,
That's crazy, because that must have been like really. I mean, like finding that out would be really traumatic, I would think.
totally. And you've kind of lined up your next few years with that in knowledge.
Yeah.
So he declined job offers within education and whatnot. So yeah.
Did he sue him?
No, he just got a baby instead. So.
Yeah, just, next best thing, I guess.
Nowadays,
little baby
if this had happened in 2021, he'd have sued the pants off those doctors.
Right.
Just kidding.
You know, he poured hot tea on himself and sued the tea manufacturer or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. So what did your parents do growing up, like job-wise? I know you said your mom like quit her job to go back to university, but
Yeah, so she was a part-time piano teacher and worked as a dental assistant. So she was going to go back to school to become a full-time dentist.
oh wow.
So on that same week, discovering that she was going to be a mom, it was a beautiful transition. And she's taught private piano lessons for a good, I guess, 40 years now.
Wow.
So my dad was a chemistry high school teacher. He retired twice, and he actually teaches chess online now. So,
wow. So is he who you learned chess from then?
Yeah, we grew up playing chess together, and I guess one of my earliest memories was actually playing Risk. And, weeping as he conquered my North American countries. And
so he was not the kind of parent to go easy on you.
No. I mean, you take the queen off the board to start teaching someone, and eventually you can play it equally. But my grandpa, during the war, he fought on the German side, but never shot a bullet at anyone. He was captured and learned how to play chess in a camp. And we played only 2 games in my life because he realized that I was getting too good. So he quickly beat me, and then he's like, "We're never playing this again. Here, you can have my chess set." So, I guess
that's how I approach when I lose things. My quote is, if I lose a game, I just say that it's a dumb game.
Nice.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. Do you remember the first time you beat your dad in chess?
Oh, yeah. And
how old were you?
I was probably grade 5, I want to say. And then by junior high, I had really bad asthma. So tried out for the soccer team. That was kind of my life. 2002, Germany went to the World Cup and went the distance. And tried out for the team. My asthma was so bad, I couldn't even run anymore. So the next week I found the chess club. And a couple weeks later went to provincials in grade 7. Didn't play very well, came 4th. But the winner got to go to nationals out in Ottawa. And I got a call a few weeks later that the other 3 players couldn't make it. So I had to represent Alberta for my grade. Yeah. So it was a lifetime opportunity, and I came last.
That's wild. So you were like, pretty far down the line. 4, and yet you still got to go. That's really cool.
Yeah. And that kind of changed
You didn't like poison all their drinks or something.
Oh, no. And I wanted to win. I was so devastated that I had lost, but yeah, all paid for expenses, flew my parents down as well. And
you flew to where again was this?
So it was actually in Toronto. So the university.
Okay. Yeah. And you got last in this tournament.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
I won my first game and then lost the rest. So it was just a devastating thing, but it kind of awakened in me a desire to learn. So I'd lose a game, come back to our little dorm, and then read a chess book for 5 hours, and then play soccer with the kids or something. But yeah, so that was kind of my life for a good.
And how old were you when you got into this?
Grade 7, so about 12 or 13.
Okay. So you, at 12 or 13, you're spending 5 hours reading a chess book.
Yeah, like every day, all day. I'd come home, play online, put in a good 30 games, watch other players. Needless to say, I was a little bit introverted. I'm more of a hybrid model these days, but
yeah,
it's kind of just an ocean within a game. And that's really fascinating in life, that whether it's tea or chess or literature, that was my undergrad. Um, you can dive so deep into this plethora of knowledge and then associate it across different fields. Um, yeah, life is just full of all these crazy, awesome things.
How is that translated into life? I'm curious if you could give us like a concrete example of like your that deep interest and is it fair to say obsession
Sure, why not?
with chess,
Yeah,
like how that's informed other aspects of your life or what you've learned from that?
and especially on Netflix, you can see where obsession can turn into addiction when it's not
Mm.
properly corralled. So I think when I was so focused on chess, I lost out, if you will, on different areas of life, which I really wish I had pushed into, whether it was friendships or, I don't know, a future job, that sort of thing. Like I still had good marks and people told me I should go into math, but yeah, I never like appreciated people around me. But these days, I think when you really push into something, it gives you a sense of wonder that you can apply to other things. So I don't know, if you hold up a gem and the different facets of it, you'll see the beauty of a gem at different angles. And you can keep rotating that gem and looking at it through different perspectives, basically. And I think we can apply that to all of us as unique individuals, or even a board game. That's a worth, it's an interactive piece of art. You can be like, hey, look at these beautiful tokens, or oh, I see in Scythe, let's see, Jamie has a little Easter egg, right? Like there's 100 Easter eggs in the map itself.
You can
So
find Santa Claus.
that's right.
He's there.
Yeah. So just having a sense of wonder and amazement, not only through games, but just how we interact with things. The tea in front of me, or I have a slice of banana bread, like the texture of banana bread is just fascinating. Or the rule book for Wingspan is fascinating because Jamie took a different angle at it. So it has this cool little papery roughness to it. And
I never want to touch another rule book after touching Wingspan's rule book.
yeah,
it is nice.
It's just not even close.
I didn't even know that there's a good dozen types of finishes you can apply to cards or boxes. So just manufacturing stuff excites me.
That's cool. Yeah. That's very cool. I watched have y'all seen this? What is it called? I'm blanking on it now, but there's a documentary on the Chicago
King.
Bulls. No. There's a documentary on the I think it's called The Last Dance, but it's basically kind of follows the last championship that Michael Jordan won with the Bulls. Anyway, what I found fascinating about it was like how dedicated he was to winning, Michael Jordan, and like what that seemed to do to him, because like one of the things that kind of comes out in the documentary is like he had some strained relationships, to put it nicely, I guess. And it just makes me think like not this is not true of everybody. There's certainly people who achieve like what he did without that, but like I think he was just so dedicated to being as proficient as possible at basketball and like being the best ever, which he accomplished. And in the process, like anybody who wasn't going to get on his level, going to get on the same page with that project, was like, he just didn't have time for them. Right. You know what I mean? Anyway, I just think about it when people like give a lot, like what it requires to be the best at something. I think there's this weird cost benefit analysis to it, I think, or there can be. And maybe that's why I'm not the best at anything, but that's going to be my excuse.
I found a really cool article that talks about at least the need for me as a millennial to monetize everything. And it said, there's no reason for you to monetize your joy. Like it's okay to knit or do a puzzle. You don't have to become like the world speed champion for puzzles, even though I'm sure that exists, or Rubik cubes, right? Like there's so many cool things we can do that we don't have to make competitive or financial gains from it, or even competitive gains. Like every single chess game you play at a tournament, you have this international rating, and that's kind of the value of who you are. So, masters might not hang out with D class players because the conversations are different, and we start creating those social classes within, even without realizing it. So, yeah, I think just going from the ground up, that we're all humans trying to do stuff with limited time, it changes the conversation, because like you're saying with Michael Jordan or Michael Schumacher, or like it just, we really focus on what makes the goat instead of what is the cost of being the goat at what expense. So I knew
coming back to Queen's Gambit, like that Netflix series, I mean, that's a lot of that in there, shows the cost and the toll that it takes on her, through the addiction and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. And it just, as you guys are talking about this, it makes me think, maybe biasedly, about this show, this podcast. And so much of the point of this for us has been like, it's kind of two things. One, we want the gamers, the consumers, to see that there are real living, breathing people behind the games that they consume. And really a way for us to kind of combat this sort of entitlement and the toxic side of how gamers can be. When we send like death threats to the people that made No Man's Sky because we thought it sucked. So there's that part of it. But I think also what I hope for the benefit of like our guests that come on is that we get to talk about like who you are as people and what makes you tick, so that your value isn't only in the things you make, right? Like how you were kind of saying, like, your value as a chess player is your ELO rating, like, your number. Like I don't ever want creators or creative types or really anybody to feel like, hey, you're only valuable if you make cool stuff. You're only valuable if your board game geek average is at, 8 or above, whatever. You have more value than that.
It's Mo from the Back Row Morning Show, and I've got 5 random facts for you. As of 2013, 12 police stations in a rural area of China have begun to use geese as alert animals. Benin, a country in Central Africa, is notable for having the highest birth rate of twins in the world. Dinosaurs lived in every continent on Earth, including Antarctica. The reason we only find their bones in certain places, though, is that weather and soil conditions in those places were just right for bones to be fossilized. In 2005, Australian Parliament took a few citizen complaints a little too seriously and banned anyone on their staff from using the word mate while at work. And a tick bite can make you allergic to red meat. For more fun facts and hilarious nonsense, tune in to the Back Row Morning Show Monday through Thursday at 7 a.m. and again at 9 a.m. Central here on LTN Radio.
So, growing up in Calgary.
Cowtown.
Cowtown.
What? Do you say that? Do people say Cowtown?
Yeah, we got lots of cows and ranchers. Home of the Calgary
Okay, yeah,
Flames.
because there's a big rodeo there too. You said
the Stampede. Yep,
I've heard that.
That's cool. So did you grow up going to church or anything? Was your family religious?
Yeah, I guess I grew up thinking everyone was adopted as well. So they told me straight up, like, hey, this is your story. And, we think God was part of that too. So
when did they tell you?
From day one. So,
oh, wow.
I was actually super lonely as a kid, just playing Lego and stuff under the grand piano. And then, I told my parents, it'd be cool to have a friend. So a month later, they adopted my baby brother, Alex, that kind of thing. And
a month later. So they were very accommodating parents.
Yes. Yeah. And truth be told, they were trying to adopt before and after.
Okay. It wasn't just your request. Right. Hey, we'll make this happen. Month later, boom.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, faith was never like an issue for me, because I'm like, well, my cosmic journey has been, pretty serendipitous anyways. in childlike terms, of course. And yeah, I kind of just appreciated being alive, I guess, because finding out more about my birth story before, later on in life, my mom had me in high school, and yeah, like a single mom giving up her baby to a family she doesn't know. Like, I guess I can say I'm truly, quote, blessed in that sense of even being born in a society where we have food and healthcare that's readily accessible. So yeah, we went to, I guess, getting back to your question, a Baptist church growing up, and struggled through that. Like, what does it mean to be a Christian? I kind of was more of, I have a list of things, kind of like my chess mind. Here's how to be a good Christian. You only listen to Christian music, or read Lord of the Rings or Narnia, that sort of thing. I quickly found out that in high school, there really is no such thing as Christian music. It's just how many times they can throw Jesus in per minute and make it sound Christian. So that was a really good undermining of my beliefs before, of maybe faith is more about how you connect with God and how you not only see God in other people, but see him in yourself and in the mountains or the beauty of board games, all these things that express like awesomeness, I guess. So that's kind of been my experience. Faith is more of an experience than just a rote list.
I think that's a beautiful way to look at things. What was like, because growing up Baptist, I mean, Drew's Southern Baptist ish.
Don't tell me what I am.
Nice.
Like I know from what I know of it, I mean, I'm not, and I haven't been in those circles, but like it does tend towards that, like maybe at its worst, fundamentalism. So, I mean, what was that journey like for you? If that was kind of your experience, like what you're saying is, just these boxes I have to check versus this more, what to me, just hearing you talk seems to be kind of a more open or like
Yeah.
a more felt or lived kind of experience. Like what was that sort of transition like? And when did that happen? Was that like, high school, 20s? Like,
Yeah, I think it was probably more intellectual before, in the sense of, like, my dad watches a good 4 or 5 hours of TV each night. So we would watch a documentary together and then talk about world events and then talk about faith and like, does God exist? Does he not? Like, what are your thoughts? So I was really, I guess, thankful coming up in a tradition that I could just talk about anything. Like, why do we do communion?
That's interesting too, because like, I'm not gonna say I don't know what the actual average like Baptist home is like, but I would say like there's not a reputation for Baptist homes of being a place where you could just talk openly about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
kind
Like
of just
that's
fall in line.
It's really encouraging to
Just
hear.
fall in line, follow the rules, don't ask questions. Yeah.
Yeah, or it maybe is happening behind closed doors and not as upfront. Like, a pastor will always say, let's have a conversation today. And then it's just him talking about it. Like the mode of doing tradition.
Let's talk about all the ways why you're wrong.
Right.
All the reasons why you're wrong.
And it's never like an open dialogue. Whereas kind of my wish for church is more like, hey, let's go to a coffee bar or a restaurant or an actual bar and just have a topic and talk about how faith intersects with that. Even if a lot of my friends growing up who are not in the church anymore, or they're in the church, but whatever sort of thing, like that kind of openness is like, they're thirsting for that. I thirst for that because faith should be interactive. I mean, it wasn't just 400 years ago that the Bible was mostly just in Latin and you'd have to talk to a priest about the truth. So yeah, faith should be really accessible and not all the time where things.
So that's something that your parents, your dad, it sounds like maybe in particular, instilled in you as like an openness to talk about these things and ask questions. And
totally. Yeah. I remember one time we couldn't find my brother in the church, and then we heard some commotion in the kitchen. He was only like 5 at the time, but he was eating the leftover communion bread. And
My
I
man.
yeah, like
Yes.
the librarian was freaking out. And
Oh
then
yeah. Yeah.
I was like, but Dad, where do we put all the bread anyways?
Mhm.
And then someone was like, well, we just throw it in the garbage. My brother's like, well, that's dumb, right? Like,
I like bread.
yeah. And it's like awesome whole wheat, the white part of the bread. Like, yeah, like let's make this a feast. So I'm totally for like questioning the underpinnings of what we believe,
Mhm.
while being rooted in tradition. Like we always have reasons to do stuff, but yeah, like it's an open knowledge society, Wikipedia, everything. If there is truth, let's just kind of flesh it out and not be scared.
So you said you got into like humanitarian work, working amongst refugees. Did that come out of your faith journey?
Uh,
Are those two related?
yeah, and it's not for everyone for sure. Like I have a lot of friends who do humanitarian work that, um, are from a Muslim background or atheistic, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the board game world. People in the humanitarian world, they're very focused on, how can we make life better for other people? How can we give them human eudaimonia? It's a Greek word for flourishing. How can we allow someone to have better life wherever they're at? So, um, I guess in high school, moving away from chess a little bit, I was like, hey, God, I have no idea what to do for the future. I'm just going to give you a gap here, like 1 year after high school, and do with me however you will. Like, kind of fed up trying to figure stuff out on my own. I got good grades, have no idea what to do with my life. So um, I went to Germany for a year, still played chess a little bit, but went to Bible school. On the side, I actually met the guy who made Carcassonne, one of the designers, by random accident.
Oh,
Random.
cool.
Yeah. So, and played tons of Catan, of course. But it kind of revealed to me that, life is about humans. Like anything on this planet that has the most intrinsic value is just people. And of course, the environment and taking care of things as well. But yeah, it was really impressed upon me that that's what really lasts. It's the relationships, it's the love you have for people. And I was struggling with not loving your neighbor, but loving your neighbor as yourself. So I had a lot of guilt of like I wasn't loving people enough, or um, the ways I was loving people wasn't good enough, let alone receiving that love. So I really wrestled with that because, as you know, in the West, we as a society struggle with just loving ourselves too much. Like it
Yeah.
is that centric me ism in all our decisions. And um, it was okay for me to acknowledge that in order to love people, I have to love myself. Like it's a
Hmm.
two-way street. Because how can you
Yeah.
love people when you're empty?
Hmm.
Or how can you blame people that are struggling in a humanitarian aspect when they
Yeah.
when they have nothing, right? Like it's kind of like someone's drowning in the ocean and they're reaching out for a life jacket or the life preserver. So you can't blame people when they're hurting for hurting other people. Hurt people hurt people. And for me not allowing myself to receive other people's love, I wasn't loving other people. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey. And I want to say that doing humanitarian work was like not about me, but I think at the end of the day, it was good to um, have people like acknowledge and love me through that, acknowledging what had been done, but at the same time, creating opportunities for other people to have that human flourishing we were talking about.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something I've had to sort of re-examine in my life as well. Like just I think there's certain traditions, Christian faith traditions or whatever, that can elevate this idea of like, and it's something that's important in the teaching of the Bible. I think that like we're spiritually broken people. Like there's like what the Bible says about sinfulness and those kinds of things. But I think if you're not careful, that can develop like an unbiblical sort of view of self, um, and our value as human beings. I don't know. I just appreciate that because I think it's um, I think it's something a lot of people who grow up in the faith are having to sort of having to think about because you can, if you're not careful, have an unhealthy view of of yourself and your value before God and before other people.
Yeah, I was sharing those same thoughts with my grandmother a couple years back, and she just started to weep. And she's like, "Daniel, that's how I was taught in the church to like basically, woe is me, I'm a sinner, and that's how I am going forward,
Mm-hmm.
right?" And
Yeah.
historically, we call that worm theology, based off
Yeah.
of a passage in the
Sinful
Psalms.
worm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and if we leave it at that, then there's no way to reconcile other things like you are made perfect, you are loved, you are chosen, accepted, valued, right? Like all of those things
Yeah.
kind of bounce off of us if
Mm.
we're just kind of encased or ingrained in this worm theology. So
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I got a chance to preach at the church I've been going to. I haven't preached in a long time, but I preached at the church that we've been attending for a while now this last Sunday, and the passage I preached on was First Peter chapter 5, and it talks about like humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God that he might exalt you at the proper time, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. And so boom, right there's like this really beautiful truth that one, God cares about us, and then two, like he wants to bear our anxieties. Like he wants us to communicate to him the things that are making us feel insecure and uncomfortable, as opposed to wanting us to dwell in our insecurities or feel them more deeply. Right. So was a really like encouraging just passage for me to have the opportunity to study more deeply. But so are you still you still going to church and stuff? Where are you at now? Like what's your faith journey like now?
yeah, I guess church is more about the people than the place. So
Yeah.
we got some, churches still meeting these days. We're kind of not under lockdown, but pretty heavy restrictions in Canada. So it's been really refreshing just being like, hey, what is church?
Yeah.
How can we still
Yeah, this has been a time to rethink some of those things, I guess. Hasn't it?
totally?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think difficult times like the one we're going through right now, it helps us reevaluate, like you were saying before. And for us, church is just connecting with some other couples Friday night on Zoom, talking about those anxieties, how we can lift them up to God. What are some awesome things? How we can celebrate that as a community. Stuff we're struggling with, food shared over Zoom. Like you can just be a lot creative, I guess, in the faith, because if God is truly truth, he can just transcend all the other stuff that's going on. So
Yeah.
that's been church for us. I did go to seminary for 5 years at a Southern Baptist one, actually. So for me,
Two peas in a pod right here.
I know, right? I think for me today, I would say I'm a Jesus follower, first off, and humbly trying to orient myself to God and what he wants me to do, whether that's board games for the moment, I guess. Maybe I was kind of prideful before, because there were some tough days like, man, you went to Iraq, right? Like I was doing all these crazy things, but were they truly the best for how God wants me to develop? Because I think he makes you do stuff that you don't want to do so that you might look like him more down the road. So yeah, board games are kind of refining me in that way.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
I have a question. Just sharing about your faith, your Christian faith, Jesus, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm curious how that informs like your game design. I think we all know of our dear, wonderful friends that make Christian games and what that tends to do. Now, we do have some friends and people we know that like we absolutely love and support what they're doing and how they're doing it, and involving Christian themes into their games and doing it in not what I think is cringy way. But obviously, like you guys made a game about tea. Nobody's going to look at that and be like, "Oh, that's a Christian game." So like, I'm sure this has been some part of your thought process at some point. I'm just curious, like maybe talk about that a little bit, or what kind of your thoughts are when it comes to, you know, quote unquote Christian games.
Right. Yeah. I guess. And I laugh just remembering my mom buying me Settlers of Canaan
Oh, yep.
instead of Settlers of Catan.
Perfect
That's
example,
funny.
my
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah, and I
Perfect
was like,
example.
oh, this might be cool. Like, I don't want to offend my mom, so we cracked it open, and the ability cards, or development cards rather, were like putting plagues on other people.
Oh,
And I was like,
perfect.
oh,
Yeah.
dang. Well, this probably isn't as Christian as I hoped, but and sorry to the designer who made that re-implementation, but yeah, going back to our earlier conversation about how there's no such thing as Christian music.
Yeah.
I mean, someone like Bono from U2, who swears a ton and drinks a bit, like he's still a guy who loves God and can play a mean guitar and has an awesome voice. Like, he's just a musician who happens to be someone faith inspired, if you will. So
Mm.
I think for me, in my walk, like, I probably gravitate towards some themes that um, would be a little bit more like PG or whatnot. But I think picking tea is very much representative of, well, I don't want to say faith altogether, but um, tea allows you to gather over something hot and inviting and accessible. At least in the last century, anyone can afford tea,
Mm.
but um, board games and tea overlap so much because as you welcome people to your table, the table is usually filled with food or beverage. So we've enjoyed many games with tea on the side, or Connie loves to make homemade bread. So that's kind of our gig. We'll have bread or lasagna or something. And
Super jealous of the banana bread you have sitting there.
oh, I know. It's from a German bakery though, so
Right.
we'll have to go back
That
again.
didn't make me less jealous, by the way.
Anytime you're here, you're totally welcome.
All right.
Yeah, I guess we're just trying to make games that can be accessible not only to the majority of the audiences, but also the age itself. Like, we want to make games that kids can play, or my 96-year-old grandma, she can play,
Mm-hmm.
like things that make people come alive. One more story from the humanitarian world. My former boss, he was in Kosovo during the main crisis, and he said he went into a home and he offered 2 big flats of water to this elderly grandmother person who was in charge of the home. And she just laughed in his face and was like, hey, come over to this other room. So they go to the other room, and there's literally walls covered with water, like cases galore, a couple thousand. And all the other humanitarian groups had just sent water. And she said to him, you know what we really need is someone who can bring joy. Like, people have lost hope. We've lost family members, our jobs, our houses, our electricity, means of transportation, everything. Like, just give us some dignity. Like, help us become more human, or at least feel what it meant to be human. So he thought about it for a bit, and he flew over someone from Kentucky who is actually a comedian and a magician. So instead of buying more flats of water, they bought balloons, hundreds of balloons, and toys for the kids and whatnot. And, let go of the balloons, and there was dancing and, in the streets that had no name. And it's just such a beautiful picture of humanity coming together and realizing it's not me trying to bring something to someone else, whether it's through my game design or my faith or something else, but it's more the other person in a very safe place saying, this is what I need. Like, that lady could have said, thanks for the water, thrown it in the room, closed the door, and then my former boss would have been like, job done, right? Let's move on to the next place. But he was able to enter into her world, and she was receptive enough to share what she needed, and it made a difference. So I guess Connie and I are just trying to keep our ears to the ground and figuring like, hey, what's the next theme that brings joy to some people? Because it's totally fulfilling getting messages every day like, this is our favorite game. Thanks for, reconnecting my aunt and I. We went to a little cafe and we ordered chai and got a chai donut and came home and had a tea party, or with my daughter or something. And sure, that's great. It makes our day, but it's also super cool that like it was reflected in their life. They were the ones that made that come alive. We just created the tool to make it happen. And that's kind of what games are for us, I think.
Well, it's been great talking to you. Yeah, it was great chatting with you, Dan. It was really cool to hear your story. And what's the best place for people to go find out more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I guess our website, just steepgames.com, or we do reply back to every message personally. So just shout out to us on Instagram or Twitter somewhere. And yeah, you're totally welcome at our table.
It's STEEPED games. Steeped, like steeping tea.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to play chess at a convention, hit me up.
Oh my gosh.
If I ever want to be destroyed at chess, I'll hit you up.
3 moves, I will come find you.
Oh, I'll play blindfold, and it equals it up. Don't worry.
Do you really play people blindfolded?
Yeah, so we'll go to tournaments and have to drive like 10 hours. So we'll play just blindfolded in the car, one game for 10 hours, and then talking about the possibilities. And it's kind of like a language.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's cool, man. Well, this is great, Dan. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting.